The second job tax myth. I'm sure you've all heard the saying, don't work a second job, you'll pay heaps of tax. Well, today I want to unpack this myth and explain why people actually believe it and why it isn't true. Hi everyone, I am Ethan Rooshock, and on today's video I'll be answering the question, do you pay more tax on a second job in Australia? And just in general discussing how tax works when you're working multiple jobs. So a lot of people do work multiple jobs, especially if they're in, say, the hospitality industry, or they're at school or just out of school and just trying to get enough money to get by. So a lot of these jobs might be casual jobs, and therefore they're working a few hours here, a few hours there, and they might have 3, 4, 5 jobs. So a lot of people then go to them, oh, don't take on a second job, you'll pay heaps extra tax. So this isn't true. Straight away I want to go, no, you're not going to pay extra tax because you're working a second job. But you may actually receive less in the hand. So I will explain that. So there isn't a second job tax as such. What it is called the tax-free threshold, and you can only claim this from one job. So what happens if you're already working your single job, you normally will claim the tax-free threshold in most situations, and therefore the tax that gets taken out of your pay factors in that tax-free threshold in the Australian tax tables. So I'll bring them up here, and as you can see, that first portion of income you earn, you don't pay any tax on. And then you can see it's tiered system. So then the next lot of income you're earning is at a low tax rate, and then it slowly becomes higher. So when you're working one job, you have the tax-free threshold ticked when you do a tax file declaration. And what happens because of this, you pay a reduced amount of tax because it factors that in already. So you take on a second job and you can't tick that box. So suddenly you go into a different set of tax tables. So I'll bring up the weekly tax table here. And as you can see, there's 2 separate columns for each earnings item. So there's a with tax-free threshold and a without tax-free threshold. And as you can see, the without tax-free threshold has a higher rate of withholding. Because in this situation, you don't want to claim that tax-free portion of your income because that's already been chewed up at another job or via other earnings. So let's have a look at an example here. So if you're earning $500 a week, the tax-free threshold tax withholding is $33, and then with no tax-free threshold, it's $112. So you can see there's quite a big difference. So your take-home pay, if you're claiming the tax-free threshold, is going to be $467, versus if you're not claiming the tax-free threshold, it's $388. So you can see where people get this mindset that, oh, don't work a second job, you'll get taxed more. So overall, at the end of the year, you're not going to get taxed more, but you will actually likely have a lower take-home pay each week, purely because you're going to have a higher rate of withholding on that income. So let's look at that same example, but let's look at, say you earned that $1,000 just from one job. So if we go back into the tax tables, you can see that $1,000 of income from one job would have been $162 of withholding with the tax-free threshold and $283 without. All right, so let's compare now if you worked 2 jobs versus one, how much tax you'd have withheld earning that same $1,000. So with the one job, you would have had $162 of tax, assuming you tick the tax-free threshold box. With the 2 jobs, you've actually only paid $145 of tax. So you've actually paid less tax working multiple jobs. So this will get into what I'll talk about next, but you can see you actually may underpay tax working multiple jobs. So there's definitely ways you can fix that, and that's what I'm going to discuss in a minute. But the myth of, oh, you'll pay more tax working multiple jobs, it just isn't true. Now, before I get into the next part of the video, I just want to thank you for being here. If this is the first time on the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit that bell button, and leave a like on the video. It really helps me grow this channel. Anyway, let's get back into the video. The way tax works in Australia is you'll pay tax on your total taxable income. So like we discussed previously, is that it doesn't matter if you're working 1 or 10 jobs, at the end of the year, you'll have a total taxable income and you'll pay tax based on that. So it's quite simple here. You take your taxable income, you work out what the tax is on that taxable income, then you take off any offsets and stuff, but we'll keep it simple. Pretty much you're taking off how much tax you've paid already as credits, and then you're either left with a balance owing or a refund. So a lot of people get confused here and they go, oh, I've received a massive refund, that's great. But overall, you're still paying the same amount of tax. So it doesn't matter if you're receiving a refund or if you've got a payment to make, you're still going to pay the same amount of tax on that income. So you can see when working multiple jobs is that The tax withheld can vary because obviously one job doesn't talk to the other to work out how much tax to withhold. We only have these two withholding rates of with tax-free threshold or without. So you've got to be careful here to have an understanding that if you are working a lot of jobs, that you may over or underpay tax. So a lot of people in this situation might not claim the tax-free threshold from any of the jobs. That way they're covered. But it just depends what your approach to money is it doesn't matter if you have a payment at the end of the year or a refund, because like I said, you're still going to pay the same tax overall. So when you're working multiple jobs, what you should consider is, are you going to be in the position where if you do have a tax payment to make at the end of the year that you're going to have the funds? If you don't feel like you're going to be able to save and keep those funds aside, then maybe you should get a little bit extra withheld from your income, or maybe you shouldn't claim the tax-free threshold. On the other hand, if you feel like you're covered, you've got good savings and stuff, then you'll be fine to have one tax-free threshold claimed, no tax-free threshold at the other jobs, and then if you do have a small payment at the end of the year, you'll be able to make that. So I hope that's been helpful. I hope I've really been able to drum in that no, you won't pay extra tax just by working extra jobs, but you may have extra withheld from a second job or a third job when you're comparing that to your first job. Overall, you may actually have less withheld from multiple jobs than you would if you were earning all that from a single job. And as always, don't stress over paying more tax because our tax system is incremental. So if you're earning an extra $100, you will be paying more tax, but you're still going to be in a better off position overall because what you earn is always going to be more than the tax you pay on that. All right, before you go, leave a comment down below. Did you ever work multiple jobs and what industry was it in? As always, I really appreciate you tuning into the video and I'll talk to you soon.